Hello, and welcome to another Twitter space where today we're talking about the unfortunate news that, well, I think we all hoped was not coming, but most of us kind of thought maybe was inevitably coming at some point. I don't think we all thought it was going to be this quickly, but here we are. And that is Mark Stone has another back problem. So we have another situation where we're dealing with. We don't know how long he's going to be out. We don't know how healthy he's going to be when he ends up back in the lineup. Like, all of it's not what we want. And then it kind of leads to the question of, like, okay, so what's next? So I'll start by kind of just summing up the information that we have. I'm assuming most people listening to this know, but we'll kind of go through it. Earlier today, or I think it would have been last night, I can't remember if it was this morning or last night, Elliot Friedman on the Jeff Merrick show said this is a big week for Mark Stone, maybe getting clarity on what we're dealing with there. I don't think anyone is really sure yet. He's listed as week to week, but nobody really knows. They're going to have a better indication of the timeline at the end of the week. So that was hopefully saying, well, maybe we'll get more by Friday, Thursday, somewhere around then. Then we had Dr. Frank Seravalli hopping on his show, the the Daily Faceoff show with McKenna. They have a segment called Icebreakers where they kind of bounce around the league and go through a bunch of different things about a bunch of different teams. The comment that Dr. Frank made was, Mark Stone, I can say with confidence, is dealing with another back injury. That has to be scary news for the Golden Knights. And then he went on to basically say he thinks there's a possibility they become players at the deadline. I think they were probably going to be players at the deadline one way or the other. I'll get into that in a second, but it's effectively confirmation, and I don't think it was speculation or anything of that sort that it's a back issue again. To me, we can go back to the very first day that it happened. I guess it would be the following day we had the press conference. Question was asked, what's the update on Mark Stone? There wasn't really one given. I then chimed in to Cassidy, is it his back? He said it's an upper body injury, and he left it at that. So I think that becomes pretty well clear that it is his back. They would have ruled that out had it been anything else. Obviously, the first thing that matters the most is it going to be possible that they're going to get him back? I think that information is going to become probably clearer and clearer to the Golden Knights over the course of the next week and a half. I don't think there's any rush to do it. I don't think he should play a game before the All-Star break. So we're talking about, I think that would be 6 more games. Let me pull that real quickly here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, 6 more games, 4 on the road, 2 at home, Detroit, Washington, then at Arizona, New Jersey, New York, and New York. There's 2 back-to-backs in there. The chances that you want him playing on any of the back-to-backs seem fairly low, so you're definitely taking him out for the 22nd and the 28th, even if he were to play on any of the other ones. To me, there's really no reason to rush him back. That would put him all the way until February 7th, which is effectively almost 3 weeks away from right now. Would be the next, or maybe it's 2. 1 week, 2 weeks. No, it's 3 weeks away from right now. Would be the next time that I think you can even consider seeing him. That's at Nashville. Then they go to Minnesota. There are not any back-to-backs in all of February, so that's beneficial. Then all of a sudden we get into March, and then we start getting a few more here and there. There's only 1 through there, and then there's 1 in April. So they do not have a lot of back-to-backs left, which is definitely beneficial. But the question becomes, how healthy is he going to be? And then how do you build the team around that? So we'll start with the least worst case scenario and then build up the best case scenario, because I think most of us are kind of leaning towards, at the very best, we're going to get a hindered Mark Stone. But let's say the information does come out that he is out for the season. And again, we're going to have Dr. Pinegar joining me in a little bit, and he will give us some of the more information about what this could possibly be, what they could possibly be looking at, what different timelines there are on different things that can happen, how likely it is that we didn't see it and something can pop out, those types of things. But let's say they do rule him out for the entire season. So that would mean the Golden Knights would then be able to put $9.5 million more on LTIR. That would then obviously free them up for a lot more space to make a whole bunch of more moves if they were to choose to do that. To me, in the event that he is out for the season, you have to look kind of at what the team looks like as a whole. So say he's healthy. Maybe I should have done it backwards. But say he's fully healthy. Then we have a fully healthy Eichel. We end up getting the fully healthy Theodore. We get back to fully healthy White Cloud. We get back to, everyone across the board being fully healthy. I think it's pretty clear that you're going to buy at the deadline. So I guess I am doing it that way now. So if they were to be fully healthy and we know that they're going to get him back completely healthy, I think at the deadline, the Golden Knights are going to buy. However, they're not going to have the $9.5 million. Now, if he were to be out for the season, but you think he's going to be back and fully healthy for game one of the postseason, a la what we were kind of discussing was a possibility of last season, okay, maybe you want to go down that road. But to me, if he's going to be out from early January all the way into April, and then the expectation is that it's a back injury that kept him out that long, and he's going to have no problems walking back into the lineup in mid-April, that seems unrealistic to me. So in the event that he were to be out for the season, I'm definitely taking buying off the table. And the reason I say it, because I know that, it's going around. You can basically read anybody's Twitter handle at the moment. Like, the first thing you're going to hear when Mark Stone is injured is, okay, well, they have money to go buy another player. That's going to be the first thought for everybody. But to me, if you buy say you were to try and buy a player that replaces Mark Stone, so you're going for, and I don't even know that there's not one out there, but like Patrick Kane, I know Bo Horvat's name is out there, Timo Meyer's name is out there, Tarasenko's name has been out there, Ryan O'Reilly, all of these different guys. First of all, you're not getting your captain. No matter what you do, you're not getting your captain. So if you put any stock into that, and I don't put a ton, but I do put some in the fact that we have seen this team kind of fall apart when Mark Stone's not there, but you're not getting that. So any stock put into that, you're not replacing that. Then you also have to remember that, like, this is a borderline Selke candidate, and they're playing a style that really fits the way that he needs to play. He elevated his game for quite a while there in the middle of, when Eichel was out. He definitely fits what they're trying to do. I don't think you're going to bring in any other player that's going to do that to that level. So no matter what, even if you do decide we're going to go spend this $9.5 million, we're going to buy more players, bring them in, and replace Mark Stone, I don't think, based on just the fact that we're in the middle of the season and you're going to have to give up assets to do it, I just don't think, even if you are willing to spend all the assets moving forward, I don't think you're finding a replacement for Mark Stone. So automatically, you're taking a step back from what you would have had with Mark Stone. That's step one. So that in and of itself, now you have to reconsider, are we actually good enough to win the Stanley Cup with Mark Stone? Now, are we good enough to do it without him, but with replacements that we're pretty sure aren't going to be as good? I think you can potentially make that argument if they get the perfect replacements, those replacements fit perfectly, and then they add multiple replacements on the back end of that. That's basically the only way that I see it happening. And then that's not even, as Glenn says in the chat here, or I guess if you reply, I see it, so I would call that a chat. Do they have the assets to give up? Yeah, they probably do. Zach Dean's a first-round pick. Brendan Brison's a first-round pick. Cormier's probably still highly thought about enough. They have a, first-round pick next year. They have the first-round pick the following year. Like, there are ways to do it, but you're asking for a lot. So then you say, okay, now let's say we do get Mark Stone back, but he's not going to be at full health, or we don't think we're going to be in a situation where that's going to be enough. So you look at that and you say, do we really want to buy 2 first-round picks of assets to get a group of players or one guy that's not as good as Mark Stone? At that point, you have to make the decision between sitting or selling. Do you want to hold or do you want to sell? We went the last deadline, they held. And it seemed like probably the right decision to hold last year. I thought they could have sold last year. They actually kind of did try moving out Dodonov. That would have gone even worse, because that deal was even worse than the one that they got in the summer. So I don't know about that. I think you have to seriously consider, again, utilizing this window of time that you've never had the chance to utilize, which is the trade deadline. The Golden Knights have been buyers every single trade deadline, aside from last one, which they sat. If they have never bought, or I'm sorry, they've never sold. They've only bought. So if you decide we have the chance to sell here, I think you can actually start the process of building around Jack Eichel and finding ways to say, okay, well, we still getting good quality play out of Pietrangelo. Maybe we need to move towards more of a Cassidy fit type of lineup. Maybe we need to get more guys who are willing to go in front, because that seems to be a problem. Maybe we need to find more guys who can shoot the puck and not directly into guys' chests. Like these types of things, you can start mending the roster, and you don't necessarily have to do all of it with picks. Yes, it would be nice to get some of the picks, but if you can find young players, or maybe you can find 2019 draft picks, 2020 draft picks, those types of players that maybe are a little bit further along, there is an argument to be made that it doesn't have to take 4 years. But at some point, they have to realize this team isn't going to do it. And I'm not fully on board with that yet, because we don't have all the information on Mark Stone. And if it's possible that Mark Stone's going to come back and be fully healthy, and they think that it was just something that we missed or whatever, or it's something completely different, whatever it is, and I don't even know that I can have that confidence, but I'm not there yet. But while we sit here, I feel like you at some point are going to have to come to that realization, one that we came to last year, and one that this team isn't as good as last year's team, even though some of the results say that they are. The first 15 games certainly say that they are, but they're way under the cap this year compared to being way over the cap last year, or at least players that are potentially actually going to play this season. That's kind of where we're at. So to me, okay, now we have to start looking at the Pacific Division. We start looking at the West. Without Mark Stone, yeah, you might be able to replace replace them a little bit and be better than Seattle. Maybe you're better than Edmonton, better than LA, better than Calgary. I think there's an argument to be made that maybe you can take a run at getting out of the first 2 rounds, but like the chances, I mean, we saw what it looked like against Dallas. I don't think it's going to look all that much better against some of the other teams in the Central. And then the teams in the East, like it just seems almost impossible to think that that's actually going to happen. And then, to me, I only want to win the Cup. The only thing that matters to me is winning the Cup. I don't particularly care at all if they fall off and find themselves. Did we lose this? This thing working now? Hit the button if you can hear me. Oh, look, Dr. Pinegar's there. All right, good. Here, let me invite Dr. Pinegar up to talk, and then we'll go from there. All right, good. It does appear that you can hear me. Here we go. Invite to speak. There we go. All right, Dr. Pinegar, if you want to hop on. I was kind of in the middle of discussing whether or not they're in a position to actually decide to buy or sell. I'll get back to that on the back end, but we'll just jump right into Dr. Pinegar here. Go ahead and unmute yourself there, Dr. Pinegar.
Good thing you're smart. There we go.
There it is. We got it. I got you. Yeah, I don't know. That was weird. All of a sudden, it just killed off the Twitter space, and there we go. But we're back. we're back. So now my recording has like 7 minutes of me talking about nothing. So people will get to hear that. I don't know how long they lost me. Actually, well, one guy tweeted that he lost me, and okay. All right, so first of all, let's welcome you back, as always, Dr. Pinegar, Vegas Sports Doc, from Crevetti Orthopedic. How was your day today? You hopefully you're not doing back surgeries?
Nope, no back surgeries. Luckily, I only had to do that as a resident, and I am happy to punt that to my very talented colleagues, because back surgery I was not a big fan of.
Yeah, that does not sound fun. Back surgery does not sound enjoyable.
It's a little stressful. There you are operating next to a person's nerves, and you have a couple people in the room that are dedicated to monitoring whether or not that electrical activity stays intact and fresh, and suddenly an alarm will go off and everybody in the room freaks out. It was a little bit not my comfort zone. Didn't like it, didn't want to do it, but props to those guys. There's some really talented people that can handle that, and that wasn't my forte.
Yeah, does not sound up my alley. But so let's jump into what we have here on the Mark Stone front. So back before we go, let's go all the way back. I'm literally looking at a thing on my shelves here with a picture of you in the crab meat. Just give me again the quick run through of what Mark Stone had done to him. Discectomy. Just give the quick run through of what that was and what that surgery was supposed to do.
So when there's a certain type of low back injury, there's a little shock absorber between the blocks of the spine, which helps you be able to have a mobile spine instead of one strict rod. And parts of those have weak areas, and if they get hit just right, part of this material from inside, which we joked about was the crab meat, can basically squish out. It's like a little hernia. And so this little herniation can pop out. And to do the surgery, they go in and remove that material that left where it's supposed to be, because that material pushes on the nerve, can cause weakness, can cause pain, and they go in and they basically just retrieve it. The issue remains that there is a weak area in that disc now, and that can have a problem again in the future. Or if you have some weakness in the discs, sometimes the one above it or below it can later have a similar problem.
So what we know of what happened to Mark Stone, and I will tell you, I've watched all 4 shifts that he took in that game. There are 2 things that occur. Once, he takes a slight cross check to the back. It didn't look like it had all that much power in it at all, but it definitely was something to his back. He ends up kind of falling down. Another guy falls on top of him. That he and that player, I believe it was Barkov, stood up, patted each other on the chest, and then both skated off to the bench. That's actually not on the broadcast. I was watching that live when it happened. The very next shift, Stone played about a little over a minute on a shift. It was a very good shift. He's moving real well, skating back and forth, stopping, starting, good stuff, looking like Mark Stone. Then there's a shot from the point that looked to me like it deflected off his leg, but there is an argument that it's possible that it caught him in the back. It's possible that happened. He continued to skate after that and then kind of glided to the bench. I don't know if he went straight off. I'm not entirely sure, but he ends up leaving, not coming back. Cassidy said he did not see the injury, so he's not sure when exactly it happened, or at least he wasn't at the time. I guess the first question is, can we have worst case scenario, which is the same disc herniates or another disc herniates and we're back to needing another surgery without it being a real clear injury that we would have seen on the ice?
Yeah, some people develop little herniations in their disc just over time, and suddenly there it is. There's not like a big heavy moment. A lot of our injuries can be like that. It's just a little wear and tear, and suddenly something minor, and there you have it.
And it wouldn't, like, remember the last one, his back locked up, he kind of rammed into the boards because he couldn't stop, and then they needed 2 guys to carry him down the tunnel. Like this one,
he was hurting a lot.
It was bad. This, it's possible that it could have been another herniation. It's not that severe, but in the end, I mean, it is a herniation.
It can be. I mean, a lumbar disc, if you have even after surgery, there's about a 10-15% recurrence rate.
Oof.
It's not supposed to happen 6 months later. It's not supposed to happen that fast, but it can rehappen. And so that's going to be our big question. The first line of treatment for any sort of disc herniation is not surgery. You remember before, he did a bunch of rehab, bunch of therapy, tried to get over it. And the severity is going to dictate how fast they approach it and how quick they do what type of treatments. But you sure hope that he gets a good bit of rehab and is on the days to weeks category instead of long term.
So they called him week to week. That was a few days ago. That appears to be continuing moving forward. We'll see how quickly that changes. But then I guess the first step, just give me the steps. So like you say we have a herniated disc. We know we had the surgery, discectomy, lumbar discectomy. You taught me how to say that. I was calling it something stupid a while back. So that happens. Now he leaves the ice. He then would go into the doctor. What are they doing when he gets there?
Initial treatment's going to make sure all the nerves and muscles are working, check the mobility of the low back, and see what is aggravating and what is improving his pain symptoms. Because depending on where a disc herniates or which level of disc herniates, you get a different category of symptoms that go with it. Sometimes the foot gets numb or weak. Other times it's pain near the hip. And if a person herniates a disc in the upper neck, like up in their cervical spine, then your symptoms are in your arms. So first getting a good exam, taking some x-rays. The x-rays should be normal. And then they're going to decide at that point, is he severe enough to need an MRI? And within a day or two, he gets an MRI. If they're worried, could something have re-herniated? Could he have a new disc herniation? Could he have another piece of that crab meat squirted out? So
what's
that's the steps.
So he goes in. We're assuming X-ray, then the MRI. We're now, I believe, we're 5 days from the injury. They know if more crab meat squirted out, right?
Yep. And even if more crab meat squirted out, the answer doesn't mean, okay, it's out again, we got to go operate on it.
Okay.
A lot of the body's being kind of the miracle that it is, the body can basically wall off and try to resorb some of that extruded material. It doesn't have to be retrieved the moment you see it. So even in that moment, they give him some steroid treatments for anti-inflammation. They do some physical therapy. He does a lot of core stabilization exercises, and you give the body time to try to heal that area. And in the event that doesn't work, that's where you talk surgery. But typically, your first line of treatment is going to be the easy treatments.
Even after he's already had a surgery?
Yeah. Even after he's had a surgery.
Okay, so the discussions the last couple of days have been like, they don't know the severity yet. Is that realistic, or are they just not telling us the severity yet? Like, I got to pull it up now. How many days are we off of it? Like, they know, right?
Well, they're going to know the size of potentially a disc herniation, but they unfortunately can't predict how might it respond to anti-inflammatories and therapy. Gotcha. There are people with humongous herniations, and their foot drops. They have no motor function at all. They have severe shooting pain, and they're put in a therapy program. They're given an anti-inflammatory, and the immediate situation looks so bleak. You're just giving them like a shimmer of hope that it might get better, and they're perfectly fine 6 or 8 weeks later. And so the body's pretty miraculous. And so when they say they're not sure, it's probably true. You can have a huge disc herniation that gets better rapidly with therapy, and you can have a tiny pathetic disc herniation that nags a person until they convince you that you have to do surgery on them.
All right. So say, how long is this therapy? Like, we're talking weeks, months?
You'd be in therapy for months, but the rate of return to play is going to be, they've got him week to week. My best guess is 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. Then assuming like it's got to improve before they put him on the ice, right? There's no way it has to improve. So then it improves. How concerned are we from a doctor standpoint of, well, I hope it doesn't happen again, but it might.
You're quoting numbers of still that 10 to 15% range for a person having a severe enough problem that it's going to be another off-season surgery.
Do you remember when we did this the last time? Do you remember the recurrence rate on hockey players?
The recurrence rate in all patients is 7 to 18-ish%. In hockey players, it's not going to be much far from different.
Okay.
I don't recall if I had given you a different number than that last time, but
I remember it being. I remember we had the discussion of like, will this work? And it was like a 85% that it will work at all, and that scared everyone. I remember believing that.
Yeah, that's recovering and competing after a surgery. So, and then in that group, even the 85% that come back and compete again, then that's the group that still has the 10 to 15% possible recurrence.
Right.
You just hope it's much down the road. The success of the surgery and the recurrence are a little different. So even though we say it's 85% likely to work, that person that returned at 85% still has a 10 to 15% chance they have a future problem. This is just fast. If this is truly another disc herniation, it's just unfortunately quick to the last one.
What I feel like last time we talked about this, we were talking about how it was like very probable that he was going to have another back surgery. Where am I missing the 10 to 15% versus us saying that he was definitely going to have another back surgery?
Well, just the age and then the likelihood of future changes. I can't predict that for sure he'd have another back surgery. For sure he'd have future back symptoms of some type. But it may be that the area above starts to break down. It may be a recurrent disc herniation. When that disc gets partially trimmed at a young person's age, that person likely gets arthritis then in their back when they're 60 years old.
Gotcha.
And then you even with arthritis, you're still doing the same easy treatments if you can get away with it. So not a guarantee of future surgery, but very, very high likelihood of future back pain.
Tremendous question from Nick that just popped across. At what point does there become a real concern for long-term impacts to quality of life?
These guys that are making lots of bucks often sacrifice a lot of their future quality of life. They're such competitors and they're making such good money. They often do sacrifice themselves. So future quality of life is not always on their immediate radar. Because have you ever been to ever seen like a video of these Hall of Famers that come out and get together? They're all hammered. Like their bodies are destroyed. Yeah. Not hammered because of the drink either. They're hammered because they beat themselves up. Right. So future quality of life, these guys are getting future knee replacements, future shoulder surgeries. They're pretty beat up by the end of their career.
But I feel like we're getting better in that like guys are starting to realize, certainly in the concussions, we're definitely getting better there, where it's like we can't have you take an 8th concussion, right? I don't like back surgeries are tough. I'll ask you the next question, which is like a lot of people I've seen this comment come up, and the quote is basically, I've never met someone who said I used to have neck problems. Do you agree with that? Like, back problems, not neck problems.
Yeah, no, it's a containment issue. You contain it, but it's in the background. It doesn't just disappear. And a lot of our injuries are like that. I mean, unfortunately, even our shoulder injuries, our knee injuries, like they're perfect for a while, and then they're back to just shy of perfect. So they often. But you're so right, and we are so much better about how we treat these guys. I mean, if you read about the way they used to treat any professional ball player, these guys got cortisone injections like every week. Yeah. Every week they'd get a shot and they'd go play, and their bodies are jacked because it's not safe to have that frequency. So we definitely, as a profession, and the players unions have really come together to be like, look, we do have to not just force these guys to play so that somebody makes money off them. We have to think about their future lives. So they're getting a lot better about that.
How much does pain tolerance come into this one? So, like, I know a lot of injuries, it's like, well, that's not going to get worse. It's just, can you deal with the physical pain of that? Compared to some of them where it's like, no, you might be able to deal with the pain, but one wrong move and this is going to get way worse. Like, where does this one land on that scale?
This one is, as long as there's not that deficit where a person has like a numb foot and has a muscle that's operating at 4 out of 5 capacity instead of 5 out of 5 capacity. There is a lot of this that guy takes a heavy dose of anti-inflammatory and he just goes for it.
Okay. So that, I mean, see that when you said that, like, I remember, I'm thinking back to when we had this discussion the last time of like you saying each different disc is connected to a different part of your body, and that you can have your foot doesn't feel right, your pinky finger doesn't feel right, your whatever. I mean, it certainly seems possible to me that he could have skated off the ice and been like, uh-oh, I can't feel my left foot.
Could have, for sure. Yep. Because in that moment it's, you're on a skate, you just skate over to the edge and you're like, and sometimes it's not an immediate sensation issue. When a person does have an initial disc herniation, sometimes they have a sensation of literal fire traveling down their leg in a certain pattern. So their muscle works fine, their sensation's okay, but they literally feel like there's a patch of skin that's on fire. And so, that's overall, they could keep playing, but they're like, whoa, this is like something just happened. So it could be something just like that.
Let me just ask about pain management as a whole. Like, what's the difference? Like, how different are people's pain tolerance? Some people are like, is that a real thing? Some people can take ridiculous amounts of pain and others can't.
Yeah, I joke, and it's hopefully not totally true, but the moment a patient tells you that they have a really high pain tolerance is the moment that you're pretty sure they don't. But some people really do, and I try to tell my patients all the time, like, I can't predict your pain based on your MRI or your X-ray, because I can look at it and tell you it's terrible, and they can look at me and say, well, it doesn't hurt, so now what? Or I can look at them and say, hey, look, there's not much there. And they can say, I'm ready to kill myself. Like, they can be in that much pain. So their pain tolerance is a big deal. Some people have different levels of like baseline inflammation, and the slightest thing sets them off. And other people, you could literally put their hand in a blender and they'd look at you in the face like, what?
Yeah, I've seen Jackass. Now, as I was asking that question, I was seeing Jackass skits go through my mind. All right, the last one, we'll play the best case scenario, worst case scenario, and most likely scenario. What are they?
I think best case scenario, he's back in a few weeks. Worst case scenario, they put him on injured reserve and he gets out and has another surgery. But for the upcoming season, I think you get him back within a month or so.
You think worst case scenario is surgery, out for season for sure?
Mm-hmm. Well, that'd be worst.
Okay, and then you think most likely, like, give me your, you've seen what happened. Like, what do you think is it's a complete guess. I'm making sure everyone knows this is not Dr. Pinegar saying what happened. This is a complete guess. What do you think is the most likely thing that happened from what we saw? No clear injury on the ice.
When they say upper body in Mark, I'm first worried about just a strain in the area he had the previous surgery. Hopefully no new disc herniation, just flared it up, aggravated it, gotta calm it down, and he's back.
And you think are they going through the season telling him like, hey, anytime you feel anything, you're out?
I think that's the smart way to do it. I mean, you got a expensive player on your hands, and you want to protect him long term. And so there's not, especially if you're much in a position where you don't have to do anything right now, then protect him.
So all of you that are listening, think of all the things we just talked about for the last 20 minutes and how much Dr. Pinegar cares about Mark Stone's back. And now think about any injury you might have, and think about how much Dr. Pinegar and his colleagues will think about your injury and how much more they'll care, because you'll be sitting right in front of them and they'll actually be able to know what's going on. Give me the quick sales pitch. That's my best sales pitch for you, but give me the sales pitch for Crovetti real quick.
Always happy to see any fan of the Golden Knights. Always happy to see any person that's suffering with any injury, long-term pain, short-term pain. There's so much we can offer if we get you in front of us. It's so hard to. I mean, we're making assumptions and speculations on these guys, but you better believe if we can get a chance to work on any of you, it'll be documented, it'll be tested, it'll be accurate, and we'll get you back up on your feet. And we sure love the opportunity to take care of any of Ken's lovely followers.
Yes,
so
there's a lot.
Happy to see Crevetti Orthopedics and VegasSportsDoc.com. You can find our information.
That's the easiest way to do it. Or just tweet at VegasSportsDoc. You're on Twitter right now, or maybe you're not. If you're listening to this tomorrow or something, you'll be able to do it. Good stuff, as always. I always appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Ken.
All right, we'll take Dr. Pinegar off of there, and then let me go back to kind of what I was saying. I'm putting the phone down now that I can rest my arms for a second. I think the more I look at it, the more I think about it, the Golden Knights have to have a clear answer by the deadline. They have to know he's going to be healthy. We're confident he's going to be healthy. I think there is a possibility that this happens, whatever happened, they rehab it as well as they can, and then they know, okay, this is what we dealt with. We're in good shape. He might actually feel better about it, having gone through one post-surgery injury as opposed to feeling perfect and still never knowing if it's going to get better. But if they're not 100% certain, and maybe that's not even going to ever be the case, I shouldn't say that. If they're not very certain, and by that I mean you can't lie to yourself. You can't say, we're pretty certain he's going to be healthy because you're hoping that he's going to be healthy. I think you actually have to know, have to have a good feel. Your doctors have to tell you it's pretty likely he's going to be able to stay healthy through the month of April, the month of May, and then into June. If you're at that point before the deadline, I think you could still stay the course, buy whatever you were going to buy, and make it happen. I don't think there's any way that they can play the true LTIR game like they were trying to last year, where they just throw the $9.5 million on LTIR, play without players throughout the rest of the season, and then try to play 90+ million into the postseason. I don't think that's going to be possible. I don't think they should try to play that game, because you're just asking for the same problems you had last year, and you're probably never going to get healthy, because you're going to end up having that situation where you have to keep players out and whatever. Everybody knows what happened last year. So then it brings it to the last piece, which is, if you find out he's either out for the season or if you find out he's going to be out for a while, like, what are we doing here? What is the new plan? To me, I think you have to start considering what is the next window? How are we going to rebuild this roster, retool this roster to put ourselves in another window, and basically just almost throwing out this season? Like, again, we talked about it last year. It doesn't mean your players have to quit. It doesn't mean you stop trying to win or stop trying to play as hard or throw games. I'm not asking for them to throw games to get Bedard. I hate that idea, because the way the NHL lottery works, I looked it up today. If they play absolutely horrendously for the rest of the season, the best case scenario they're going to be in is 7.5% to win the lottery. You're not throwing a season to have a 7.5% chance at anything. So that's not what I'm trying to say. But what I am trying to say is, if you can start making moves looking forward, looking at, say, what can we get for William Karlsson at this deadline? What can we get for Jonathan Marchessault, Shea Theodore, Braden McNabb? If you want to look at a Chandler Stevenson, if you want to look at, even some of the younger guys maybe coming up, if you say, I don't think Brisson's the guy, let's cash that in now. I don't think whatever we can. Martinez, can we get something out of him? Can we get something out of? It's basically everybody but Eichel, Pietrangelo, and Stone. And obviously Stone, I think you can deal with it better moving forward, knowing, okay, well, are we going to be in a position where we're going to lose him or whatever? You'll have a better indication moving forward. We'll see. As for what the plan is, I think you have to start looking and seriously considering utilizing this next window, which is the deadline, of how do we make ourselves better for the future? And that doesn't necessarily have to mean sell for picks. Like, I think everybody thinks it's one of two things. You either have to buy or you have to sell, and big in a way of like, yes, we're going to get rid of all our players and take on nothing that actually helps us on the ice. No, that's not necessarily the case. You can look at teams that have up-and-coming players and pluck off those players and help out teams that are on the run and maybe are on the come-up, teams that are going to make a run. There are ways to do it. Again, it takes reality, though. It's going to take reality. And hopefully the Golden Knights get enough information on the Mark Stone situation so that they know what's going on and they can feel comfortable of he's either going to have a good chance to come back this season or he's not. And they can't live in the wishy-washy world that I think they lived in a lot of last year. And then the other one that we have to consider is Eichel doesn't look himself. Like, Eichel has not looked very good the last couple of games. It's led to Stevenson not looking very good. It's obviously led to the team not looking very good. We're kind of picking on him, saying, well, Mark Stone picked up his game. Why aren't you picking up your game now too? There's an argument to be made that he's not fully healthy. And you can go back to the comment that would happen here. Where is it? Here it is. McCrimmon told the Review Journal he didn't want to put a timeline on Eichel's return, said he's gotten multiple opinions and a treatment was in place. Quote, we want to have this be something that we put behind us and not deal with again. I'm not so sure that happened. Looking at how he's played the last couple of games, like, you just don't see that burst. You don't see the same impact on the game that he has had. I do think that Stone not being there hurts that, but he's got to be fully healthy. So you're going to have a good feel about that. Like, it all again adds up to, okay, if everything goes perfectly, where are we? And I think when things were going perfectly for the 25 games at the beginning that we were through, certainly through 15 games, I think we were starting to believe, okay, yeah, you know what? If things go perfectly, this team can do it. I think these goalies have a chance to do it in the playoffs. We can do this. We buy a couple of extra pieces to help out. We get the right piece in the right place. Everybody's in position. We can do this. They could probably withstand one or two injuries here or there. As we've gotten 5, 6, 7 injuries, by the way, I can't stand when we show the injury report and say there's 7 players out of the lineup. Like, if everyone was healthy, Miromanov and Dorofeev are not in the lineup. So I don't know why we're doing that. I'm not even sure Howden's in the lineup when he's healthy, if everyone were to be healthy. Yes, they're definitely missing 4 or 5 players. But now, injury to Mark Stone, I'm not that concerned about like long-term impacts on White Cloud or Theodore. I'm not that concerned. Well, I don't actually know about Howden yet. Miromanov, not concerned about. I think that's a broken foot. I don't have all the information there, but I do know that it's weeks, not days on him. Dorofeev, I don't think really makes a huge difference. Carrier, we don't know yet. And then there's Martinez, who again, injury again, not having a very good season. You have to start asking yourself, can we ever get back to a perfect position? And if we do, can we win? I think you can make the argument, if we do, we can win. I think it can still be made. And if all of the injury information says that's the way to go, we're going to get fully healthy, we're going to have a chance, then yes, I'm perfectly fine with saying, all right, let's play it, buy a few players. I don't mind being in LTIR by a couple of $1 million here or there and having to kind of find that guy that's going to be out at the right time late in the season, whatever. I'm not that worried about that. But if this team is not going to be fully healthy, and at the moment it certainly looks like we're not going to end up back at that point, missing just about any player, you start to look at the holes. You start to look at the issues that they have on depth. Third line's a problem. Depth scoring can be a problem. Depth defense is actually looking a little bit better, but depth scoring certainly is an issue. You ask your questions about the goaltending. Can the goaltending stand up if the defense isn't playing absolutely 100% lights out hockey? I'm not sure we're at that point that we have a good answer of yes on that one. And then, you have to ask yourself, are we going to actually make it? Are we going to actually get through all of, say, the rest of the regular season, then the entire postseason? Are we going to get through multiple playoff? Like, you have to be real with yourself. And I just don't know that we can all feel comfortable with that, which then leads to you probably have to look at selling, which then leads to the final topic I want to bring up, which is, okay, we're going to start trying to rebuild around the players that we have, the players that are on the no move clauses. Certainly, I think Eichel becomes the kingpin of everything you're trying to do. You start trying to find a dominant line for Eichel. I think it's fair to say, all right, well, how did the Bruins do it? How did the Bruins have as much success as they had with this coach? They had a lot of bigger defensemen. They did have one stud defenseman back there. They've had a couple over the course of time. Do you try and find more of those? And then perfection line. Are you trying to find two players that are going to fit perfectly with Jack Eichel to make a perfection line that you can then have Cassidy roll out the way he was before? I think there's an argument to be made there. That brings the question of, is this the right front office to do it? They clearly have an affinity for superstar players. They clearly have an affinity for not really building up all that much depth. They don't seem to value finishing as much at different times. They have certainly not worried all that much about impacts on how the locker room is going to deal with certain things. Obviously, the goalie situation was one that pops into mind there. Is this the right front office to actually get the job done? And yes, the team's in first place. I think they're still in first place at the moment. Yes, they're in playoff position. Yes, it's very possible that things happen that make them better, or that they can, win some games and be in a good position moving forward. But are they going to win the cup? And are you going to rebuild with this particular group? And that's an answer Foley's going to have to make. I don't know how many years you go doing kind of the same thing. Like, there's no doubt in my mind they're still heading in the wrong direction. They went to the Stanley Cup final, and I feel as though they've headed in the wrong direction every single year since. That's not to say this is the worst team they have or any of that. Like, we may get there, we may not, I don't know. I just don't feel like we're getting closer to winning a Stanley Cup. They were 3 games away in year one, with all the cap space, all the goodwill, a great coach, a great setup. All of it was looking really good ever since. And yes, they've gotten close a couple of different times. Made it to the Final Four 2 more times. I get it. But to me, they're not getting closer. And now, as the roster sits, there has to be a fairly significant rebuild. I actually liked what Jim Rutherford said up in Vancouver, which was, look, I thought we needed minor surgery here. I think we need major surgery. I think this roster needs fairly major surgery. That doesn't mean the entire thing has to be ripped down. I don't think it means it has to take 5 years. I don't think that at all, actually. But they have to start trending in the right direction, as Paige Lee Dominic says on the Twitter there. They're trending backward yearly instead of forward. That has to change. That has to change, and it has to change soon. Otherwise, the longer they kick this can down the road, the more we're going to start worrying about things like prospects. Today, The Athletic came out with their prospect list of best players under the age of 23, and they ranked like 150 or 200 players, and the Golden Knights have 1 on the list. Their first-round picks have not been great. Yes, Zach Dean went and won a World Juniors, but I didn't think he had a hugely impactful tournament. Certainly wasn't one of the best players on that team. Brisson's not been able to even be an option coming up. They've gone with Fraze and Ronebier and Lecision and Cotter and all these other guys, and we've never even considered bringing up Brisson because he hasn't been good enough in the AHL. And that's a 2019 draft pick, or is it a 2020 draft? It's a 2020 draft pick. Like, it's 2023 now. We're to the point where we should be talking about him potentially making an impact, starting to get into that lineup. We're not there. And the question then is it development? Is it poor drafting? Is it a combination of both? Like, it all needs to start being considered, because they have to start trending in the right direction. They have good players. There's still enough good players, and there's enough good players on halfway decent contracts or good contracts that you're not in a position where you can't sell or you can't start over or you have no assets or any of that. That's not the case. They're not in the worst position in the world, but The longer they keep going down this road, the worse and worse and worse and worse the position's going to get as the older some of these guys get. And you're going to end up in a situation where you're behind the eight ball because you have a guy that you signed that was, 30 years old, and you signed him to a 7-year contract at $9 million apiece. You have now whatever's going to happen with Mark Stone. Like even the Mark Stone deal, we looked at it and said, well, he's going to be old towards the back end of that deal. What's going to happen? That was before we knew about any back issues. Now, that one starts to speed it up a little bit. And I know a lot of people are going to look at it and say, okay, the window's very small. We have to go for it right now. And it's important to note that, like, making the playoffs cannot be the goal of this team. We can't just sit here and say, okay, Mark Stone's out. We're not going to make the playoffs if we don't replace Mark Stone. That's what we have to do. Like, what does that do? In many ways, making the playoffs will hurt them, just like last year. Making the playoffs would have been worse. It would have made you feel a little bit better, but they would have been even further down the draft pick board. Last year they didn't have the first round pick. This year they do. I'm not saying they want to miss the playoffs, but just getting in for the sake of getting in, for the sake of we're saving jobs because that's what we're going to do. Like, I don't see the benefit in that at all. I do not understand the idea of, like, if we don't make a move fast, we're not going to make the playoffs. Like, okay, who cares? If you can sit here and say, if we don't make a move fast, we're not going to make the playoffs, and because of that, we're not going to win the Stanley Cup because we have a roster and a group of collection of players and coaches that can actually do this. Okay, then I don't mind acting fast, making something happen. But I don't know how you can sit here and say that. They're 15, 13, and 2 over the course of their last 30 games. 30 games. Like, that's into mid-November. We're talking 2 months here. 30 games. 15, 13, and 2. That's an 87-point pace over the course of 82 games. If they continue at that exact pace, they are not going to make the playoffs. Or at the very best, they'll end up just barely sneaking in as the third team in the Pacific or a wild card team. And then they probably, having gone 60 games of being an 87-point team, will not do well in the playoffs. Trust me, I just watched a shitty football team go an entire season, get into the playoffs, and then act like the same shitty football team in the playoffs. It wasn't great to watch. It's not fun. They didn't have an option. They didn't have a way around it. Like, they didn't have any choice, the Buccaneers I'm talking about. This team has a choice. They have the ability to make something happen. Now, it does come down to what's going on with Mark Stone. If he's out for a week, a month, even if it's like a month and a half, if you know he's going to get better and you say, okay, we think the therapy's working, it's heading in the right direction, this is going to go well, we'll be fine, then yeah, you can consider making that move that you were going to make at the deadline a little bit earlier. But if it's not real confident and the dose of reality that is going to have to be going through the minds of everybody at City National Arena right now, and I'll say this, I think they've probably had these discussions because there was a chance that they were going to be without Alex Pietrangelo the entire season, and they could not replace his salary. So these discussions may have been had already, and I think that losing Mark Stone might even be more significant than losing Pietrangelo. It's similar. It's close. Maybe you can make the argument for Pietrangelo, but still, it's close. There has to be a dose of reality, and part of that dose of reality is going to have to be Foley on his own, making the decision. If we decide to pull the plug, or half pull the plug, or start pulling the plug, or start making it into a European plug instead of the American plug, or whatever I'm going with this weird metaphor that I'm on now. If we plan on going that route, do we have the right people in place to do it? And that change, there's an argument to be made that change needs to happen before the deadline. Or you got to put handcuffs on it at the deadline to see where you go from there. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm not calling for anybody to get fired at the moment. I'm not calling for any of things of that to happen. But there has to be a heavy dose of reality right now that we can't just take it's all going to be okay if it's not. Like, you need realistic, real timelines on people, real timelines on what's the probability that this guy's going to be 100%. Because if they don't have 100% Mark Stone and 100% Jack Eichel and 100% Alex Pietrangelo and probably 100% Alec Martinez, which we seemingly have not got most of this season, I don't know how they're going to win. I just don't. And I'm looking at it saying, here's all the things I thought were going to be a problem before the season started. All of them have cropped up. If I'm sitting here now on January 17th saying all of these problems, I don't see how you're going to win 16 playoff games. They have to be able to see it too. The same problems we talked about all offseason are here. Now, the same problems that we see potentially moving forward, even if we go during a case of best case scenario, we still have some of those problems. We have to be realistic about this. I think it might be time to start a rebuild again. And I hate that I'm saying it again. I feel like I said it a little bit of last year. They did not do it. I'm not fully there because we don't have all the information on Stone, but man, it's scary stuff. Thanks again to Dr. Pinegar and Cravetti Orthopedics for joining me on this one. We got some great information there. I love talking to him, especially about stuff that we actually know what we're talking about. We don't know exactly what's happening to Mark Stone right now, but we do know the area of the body. We do know some of what's going to happen. I thought that was pretty cool, the idea of how it's going to go down. That was pretty neat, little like tidbit of information of like, okay, here's what happened. Here's what they're going to do next. I thought that was pretty cool. He's awesome. Trust me, if you have anything wrong with you that you can need an orthopedic doctor, surgeon, any of that, I highly recommend Cravetti Orthopedics. Tell them SinBin sent you. There's no special deal. They're a doctor, but like they're great. Trust me, they're awesome, and he's a great guy to talk to. He's awesome. Listen to how great he was with everyone else's injuries. Imagine how good it'll be with yours. That's all I got for tonight. Good night, everybody.